Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, the show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. And I am a clinical psychologist, and I'm also the parent of an ADHD adult. And that's where I learned almost everything I know about ADHD. I've also got like 40 years of experience working with ADHD families and adults. Um, so I have a lot of practical experience. And one of the things we all do at this time of year is we uh, give ADHD families a whole bunch of different kinds of things they can do to make sure the holidays don't blow up and become a horrible, horrible experience for the entire family. But we frequently neglect, and I have done it as well, one of the most important parts of that. Okay, sports teams after a game, they have a debrief. They go through and see where the mistakes were and who can do this better and do that better and so on. And the same thing with any company. Periodically, they do reviews of how things are going and so on. Well, after you have finished a major event like a holiday, where you may have traveled to distant relatives and spent a lot of time with a lot of people you don't usually see, it's important. Okay, you are the parent of an ADHD child. That means you don't get to mail it in. You got to work at it a little more than parents of neurotypical kids. Okay, the world's designed for neurotypical kids. It's not designed for your child. So you've got to figure out what you did on this last holiday that works or worked, and what doesn't work, and what are areas that are still problematic, and you have to figure out something to try that maybe will make it better. Okay, that makes sense because it's really important, especially when there are only two of you. You know, mom and dad, presumably, and that's I would limit it to that. I wouldn't get the whole family involved in this, just the two of you. And of course, the trickiest part of all of that, without a doubt, is you don't want to turn it into a blame game. You know, I know ADHD families frequently, at least one of the parents has ADHD. Okay, and that can be a touchy point. And the other thing is they both parents may not agree on exactly how to treat different problems with a child with ADHD. You know, uh, typically one will think force, fear, and punishment is the way to handle this stuff, and can't coddle the kid. Uh, you'll turn into a juvenile delinquent. And if you live like I do in an area that's got tons of retired and active duty military, you get a lot more of that. But the deal you've got to recognize, okay, you're both trying to raise this kid. You both have to agree. You both have got to be unified because you can't if one of you is not in agreement. Well, for one thing, ADHD kids have this little radar, and they can look at you and tell, oh, she didn't like that, or no, he doesn't like that. He doesn't agree with that, so I can get something out of him or out of her. So you've got to agree, and you've got to understand that uh, this is a work in progress. There aren't absolute rules. Good Lord, wouldn't it be nice if there were? The kid didn't come with a set of instructions. It just didn't happen, and it's not ever going to happen. I don't think. But anyway, so you have to look at what happened. Did we do better this year than last year? Where we, did what really worked for us. It was that soccer game right before dinner a really good idea, or did it just make things more complicated, or and other things sort of in general. When you're the parent of an ADHD child and you're in a high stress situation for yourself, you got to watch out on uh, how you're treating your kid. I've said this every week. There's research that suggests that ADHD kids get 70 critical comments a day. Okay, so we also have a thing called the Lesotho rule, which says that for every critical comment, you should have 4 to 5 positive comments. And for people who are just starting out as ADHD parents, I recommend they carry a 3x5 card, or I'm sure there's a way to use your iPhone or whatever you've got to keep track of it. But actually make a tick mark, 2 columns, 1 positive, 1 negative. Make a tick mark for every positive comment you make. Make a tick mark for every negative comment you make. And then, you can tell how you're doing. Are you jumping on him or her for every little thing? Or are you, because ADHD kids respond really well to positive reinforcement and hardly at all to punishment. And that's one of the things you got to keep remembering. Remember, it's a neurologic condition. It is not a behavior disorder. Okay? You're not dealing with somebody who's going to grow up to be a juvenile delinquent unless you make it so that seems like a reasonable thing for him to do. That is, that you are critical and harsh, and there's no way he can win or she can win. Then, all sorts of bad stuff happens. So anyway, you're talking about, you just got back from wherever, grandma's house or wherever you went for the holiday. So what did you do? Did you have a plan? Did you make sure they got reasonable diet, stayed on schedule, got some exercise, helped them with their meditation or relaxation training, whatever you're doing with them, handle the situations so that they had something that they could do that make them a part of the celebration. They set the table or whatever. Did you do some of these? How did it work out? Were there problems you didn't foresee? And how would you handle them if it happened again next time? And this is what you have to be talking with each other about. And this cannot turn into a blame game, okay? If you blame each other, well, you probably will not do a debrief next year, okay? And you will not have learned anything. And that's the important thing is, okay, nobody's going to tell you that raising an ADHD child is easy. So you have to be gentle with them, but you also have to be gentle with yourselves, because you're it's a little more stressful than if you're, well, if you just had a neurotypical kid, it's a lot harder, and you can't just mail it in. You have to really think through things and analyze them and use science and use your good judgment and your intuition as well. You do this, okay, every year, and pretty soon you ought to be really smoking it. You ought to be really doing well. But and it's good for your marriage too, to be able to talk to each other about difficult situations without blaming each other, and without getting into arguments and stuff. You need to be able to talk about this stuff, because it's tricky, and I am not gonna even try to minimize that. It is a very tricky situation. It is very complicated, and feelings can get hurt easily, and lots of negative consequences can occur. But you work it. You keep be calm. Not you always do this. Nah, we can't be doing that. Okay, it's I think we could have both been a little more positive when, when he spilled the dressing all over or whatever happened, you know. Um, and you know, you need to be able to analyze it objectively and then look at, okay, what are we going to do next year? Do we have to change anything, or are we in pretty good shape? Um, you know, and you know, sometimes, especially family, if you've got a family that's a lot of family members that are really negative about ADHD, don't understand it and don't want to understand it, you know, you may have to, you know, even consider whether you want to go back again next year. Because, you know, the deal is you're raising this child and you want to give him or her the best shot that they can have to do well in life. And uh, if visiting relatives is a super pain and is really bad for them, really negative for them, well, then you want to stop. Perhaps consider at least not putting them through that again next year. You know, get your go somewhere else or stay home. Hey, lots of people do that. So just let's hold on to that thought and hold on to that possibility. Um, and you'll find you get used to this sort of thing. And a debrief is important. You know, I will tell you honestly, I raised two kids that were more or less neurotypical. Okay, and basically we mailed it in. It was pretty easy, you know. Sure, no problem, whatever, you know. You know, the ADHD one is different. You know, it's a lot more work and a lot more planning. And if you don't do it, if you don't do the work and the planning and educate yourself and so on, um, it doesn't end well. Um, yeah, I will. Well, I'll tell you one story. I had a ADHD patient. Okay, it started out. It was just sort of they were saying behavior problems and that kind of stuff. And so for a while, I didn't do much of anything except do some therapy. Boy, did I make therapy sound like it's not important. Therapy is terribly important, but we did a couple of sessions, try to get a feel for what's going on, and then yeah, I evaluated him, and it was pretty clear that he had ADHD. He was um, an adopted child, and kind of an unusual situation in that the father was the marshmallow. He was the one who couldn't punish, couldn't hold the line. Mom was trying her best, um, but Dad kept cutting her off at the knees. That is, oh, don't, let's just forget about that. Well, and they kind of were offended, I think, that I was saying that this child had ADHD, and they quit coming. And then it was about a year, probably, maybe a little more. He had graduated from high school. He had enlisted in the Army, and he got booted out of the Army. And he kept calling me, wanting me to write him some kind of a note so he could get back in the Army. And I said, well, I got to know. I don't know why, what kind of discharge you had and all that stuff. And I'm retired Air Force, so I know some of the stuff about the military. Okay, just, send me a copy of your discharge and let me look at it and we'll talk about it. Never did it. Never sent it to me. Just, he called up a couple more times. Can you write me that note? I said I need to see your discharge. So I don't know what he's doing now, but that was a situation that the parents didn't grab a hold of the reins, and they didn't do what they needed to do when they had the chance, when it was early enough to make a difference. I say a lot of times that ADHDers do better with positive reinforcement than they do with punishment. That does not mean that there can be no limits. On the contrary, it's important that there are limits, but you don't have to, well, punish excessively, shall we say, to set limits and to hold people to limits. All I'm saying is that you have to do that, and it's a lot more work for an ADHD family than it is for a neurotypical family, just in general. And that's okay. That's okay. That's just what it is. You can kvetch about it, and I think that's the expression. Complain about it all you want, but it's just another one of those things in life that you have to deal with. Uh, like being a 5'2" freshman and wanting to play basketball. Nice, but good luck. So just remember that this is an idea that will help you in the long run. It's not always pleasant to go through, but you and your spouse get together and you talk about how the holiday went, the high spots and the low spots, and what you could have done better, and what you did just fine on. And it's not a blame game, so you're just trying to improve everything for the whole family. Okay, that's me for this week. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this has been Dr. G's ADHD Chat show, trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. Just remember, ADHDers are outside the box thinkers. They're the people who are going to solve the big problems. Neurotypical thinkers are good at keeping the system going the way it is. ADHDers can see problems and solve problems that are really important. So we need them, and we need them to be confident and self-assured and ready to apply their abilities. Okay, we will catch you next week.